There's a silent, terrifying moment that grips us all, a split-second decision that dictates your fate when someone calls you out, questions your worth, attacks your character, or twists your intentions. In that raw instant, most people instinctively do what they've been conditioned to do. They defend themselves. "I didn't mean it that way. You misunderstood me. I swear, I'm not like that." It sounds noble, reasonable, even fair to explain yourself, right? But what if this seemingly innocent act is actually the precise moment you surrender everything? What if every word you utter in defense is a silent admission of weakness, a visible flinch that savvy opponents recognize as blood in the water? If you've ever felt the sting of an accusation and then the hollow defeat after trying to justify yourself, this message is for you. This isn't just about winning an argument. It's about mastering the brutal, often unseen laws of power that the legendary strategist Machiavelli understood centuries ago, secrets that ensure you never lose control of the narrative and instead force the entire world to defend you. Don't let your natural instincts lead you to a path of constant vulnerability. What you're about to learn will fundamentally shift how you navigate conflict, revealing the ultimate path to untouchable authority. The conventional wisdom dictates that self-defense is essential, yet in the intricate dance of social dynamics and power plays, it almost never convinces anyone. Worse still, the act of defending yourself serves only to shift power away from you and directly into the hands of your accuser. When you feel compelled to justify your actions, you inadvertently agree to play on their chosen battlefield, accepting their biased framing of the situation. You are, without even realizing it, implicitly granting them the authority to interrogate your integrity. The moment they possess that authority, they seize control of the entire narrative. Regardless of whether you are factually in the right, the very act of rushing to explain yourself often makes you appear guilty. Only the truly weak feel an urgent need to clarify every perceived slight. In stark contrast, those who possess genuine strength understand the profound impact of silence. They allow the accusation to hang in the air, untouched and unanswered, because they grasp a profound truth. The true master of the game subtly turns the accusation back into a mirror, forcing the accuser to reflect on their own motives and emotional state. This strategic stillness compels others to perceive the accuser as overly emotional, perhaps even obsessed, bitter, or unstable. Machiavelli, with his unparalleled insight into human psychology, recognized that the individual who speaks first often loses control of the frame, and he knew beyond doubt, whoever controls the frame ultimately controls the outcome. Most individuals defend themselves primarily because they yearn to be understood, holding a deep-seated belief that if they just explain enough, clarify enough, or repeat themselves enough, they will eventually be vindicated. However, this conviction stems from a place of emotional vulnerability, not from a strategic mindset. In the arena of power, your goal isn't clarity, it is absolute control. Clarity might be suitable for a therapy session, but control is the currency of power. And authentic power rarely arises from being understood. Instead, it flourishes from being respected, occasionally feared, and fundamentally from appearing utterly untouchable. Consider the implications. When someone labels you arrogant, cold, selfish, or manipulative, and your immediate knee-jerk reaction is to blurt out, "No, you don't understand." In that precise moment, you have already lost. You have reacted, proving that their words bother you, and you have placed the ball squarely back into their court. In doing so, you willingly surrender the most potent Machiavellian weapon at your disposal: mystery. Reflect on the most truly powerful people you've encountered throughout your life. Not necessarily the loudest or the most universally liked. It was often the quiet ones, those who wielded silence as a precise weapon, making you second-guess your own thoughts with just a piercing stare. They were the ones who, when attacked, never once flinched. Machiavelli would have unequivocally declared, "He who explains submits. He who remains silent forces others to fill in the blanks," and they often overestimate him. This is the essence of the game. When you refuse to react, a profound discomfort settles upon your accusers. They begin to doubt their own pronouncements, frantically looking around for validation that simply isn't there. Suddenly, their perceived power diminishes, while yours quietly expands, because you have executed the one maneuver no emotionally driven person can withstand. You force them to contend with their own words in a void, to speak to themselves. This is how you masterfully flip the power dynamic, allowing their accusation to wither and die in the hollow echo of its own inherent weakness. Let's delve deeper into this subtle art of non-reaction. Imagine walking into a room where someone, either subtly or directly, throws a jab your way, perhaps a veiled comment about your success, a sneer at your attitude, or a whisper about your past. Every eye in the room inevitably turns, anticipating your response. Your Machiavellian move here is simple, yet profoundly effective. Say nothing. No defense, no aggressive retaliation, not even a smug smirk. Just maintain a posture of calm, complete stillness. In that moment, you become utterly untouchable. Why? Because everyone in the room is now compelled to ask themselves, why didn't he react? Does he know something we don't? Is he truly above this petty squabble? Did that attack just inadvertently make him seem stronger? You have, with a single non-action, completely flipped the entire social frame. People are no longer focused on the accusation itself. Their attention is laser-focused on your unshakable response. And silence, when delivered with a powerful, knowing presence, communicates a message far louder and more compelling than any verbose justification could ever hope to achieve. Machiavelli understood this profound psychological principle. Power is not merely what you utter. True power lies in what people believe you could say, but choose, with deliberate strategic intent, not to. Now, consider the coldest, most advanced move of all. Sometimes you don't merely ignore the accusation, you ingeniously invert it. When someone calls you manipulative, instead of bristling, simply smile, look past them as if their words are a mere trifle, and calmly state, if that's how you choose to see it. There's no defensiveness in your tone, no hint of apology, just a cool, neutral detachment. What transpires in that moment is remarkable. Your accuser scrambles because they were anticipating a fight. They desperately wanted to see you squirm. Instead, they find themselves left holding their own weapon with no target. This is when the insidious weight of guilt begins to settle on their side. They start to question if they overstepped, if they embarrassed themselves, if they now appear insecure. And the answer, predictably, is yes, they absolutely do. You've masterfully taken the negative energy they hurled at you and compelled them to carry its weight, all without lifting a single finger. There arrives a critical moment when silence becomes unbearable, not for you, but for the one who desperately anticipated a reaction. That's precisely when the tables dramatically turn. They believed they were the formidable accuser, but now they stand exposed as the one desperately begging for attention. And you have transcended mere innocence to become something far more potent, utterly untouchable. Machiavelli grasped a fundamental truth that the majority of people will never fully comprehend. Words are not solely meant to clarify truth, but often to skillfully obscure it. When someone subtly or directly attacks you, their unspoken desire is to draw you into the fog of emotional explanation, to drown you in a torrent of defensive justifications. The more you explain, the less certain and authoritative you appear. Therefore, the strategic counter is to allow them to fill the silence. What inevitably happens is that they overplay their hand. They repeat themselves, they grow increasingly desperate, emotional, and eventually appear unstable. You, meanwhile, have uttered nothing, yet now they are the ones under scrutiny and judgment. The crowd, you see, isn't truly listening to the specifics of what's being said. They are acutely observing who remains calm and composed and who is visibly rattled. That, my friends, is the essence of social power, and it doesn't spring from being factually right, but from embodying an aura of untouchable self-possession. Consider a typical business meeting scenario. Someone subtly attempts to undermine you, perhaps by remarking, "I'm not entirely sure that strategy has been thoroughly thought through," or "He always has these grand, bold ideas." They are fishing for a reaction. They want you to bite. The common response involves leaning forward, launching into explanations, trying to prove your point, clarifying details, and visibly getting nervous. The entire room senses this vulnerability. However, the Machiavellian operator does the opposite. He leans back, patiently waits, perhaps even offers a faint, knowing smirk. If he speaks at all, it's not a defense, it's a masterful redirect. Let's hear your strategy then. Now, the onus to perform shifts entirely to the attacker, and the dynamic of the room instantly flips. Suddenly, they are being evaluated. They are under pressure. This is because silence from a confident, unshakable individual functions as an accusation without words, making others feel diminished without you having to lift a finger. In the realm of romantic or personal relationships, this principle becomes even more potent and, at times, more dangerous. Imagine your partner expressing, "You don't care about me anymore." The average person would panic, immediately launching into a barrage of explanations, earnest reassurances, and defensive postures. In doing so, they inadvertently validate the emotional framework of the accusation. The Machiavellian approach, however, is radically different. You do not dismiss them, nor do you engage in an argument. Instead, you allow the full weight of the accusation to hang in the air, silently. You observe them grappling with their own dramatic pronouncement, letting it echo in the space between you. Then, with an almost unnerving calm, you simply respond, "That's not how I see it." Short, grounded, devoid of any explanation or justification. Now, they are the ones who feel uncertain. They begin to question their own tone, wondering if they were overly reactive, because in that pivotal moment, you maintained absolute control over the most crucial element, the emotional tempo of the interaction. And whoever controls the tempo, undeniably controls the frame. There exists an even deeper, colder tactic to employ. Instead of merely remaining calm when accused, you effectively disappear. If someone insults you, do not reply. Do not respond. Do not acknowledge them in any way. Crucially, do not even block them. Allow your complete absence to linger like a silent mirror, reflecting their own desperate need for a reaction. Let them stew in the unbearable silence of being utterly ignored. This devastatingly breaks people in two distinct ways. First, they realize you didn't even deem them worthy of a response, a slight that cuts deeper than any insult. Second, they begin to construct elaborate internal narratives, spiraling into a vortex of self-doubt and often destroying their own composure. Why is this so effective? Because the average person thrives on emotional validation, even within conflict. When you deny them that validation, they wither, they spiral further. They may post more, talk to others, and relentlessly try to bait a reply. With every desperate attempt, they appear progressively weaker, more obsessed, and increasingly unhinged, all while you remain perfectly still. This is precisely when you win. Not because you proved anything, but because they utterly destroyed themselves in their futile attempts to elicit a reaction from you. Here's where the strategy becomes truly elite. Instead of defending yourself when attacked, you subtly reframe their accusation to expose their weakness. If someone calls you arrogant, calmly retort, "It's strange how confidence makes some people so uncomfortable." If they label you manipulative, reply, "Only people who can't be influenced often say that." If they accuse you of being fake, simply state, "Everyone says that when they stop getting what they want." You are not merely denying the accusation, you are masterfully turning their perceived criticism into a glaring spotlight on their own insecurity. And now, they are the ones scrambling, desperately trying to defend themselves. This isn't just a reversal, it's a powerful form of psychological judo where you utilize their own emotional force to orchestrate their public collapse. Machiavelli would describe this as the turn of the blade. Do not meet the sword with a shield. Instead, let the attacker fall on his own weapon. The world incessantly teaches you to defend your reputation, to explain yourself, to zealously clear your name. But Machiavelli, with his astute perception, recognized the inherent trap in this conventional approach. He understood that the very moment you begin to chase innocence, you implicitly admit a degree of guilt. The true strategist, therefore, never plays that game. Instead, he appears too composed to be shaken, too elevated to truly care, and too unequivocally clear on his own position to ever feel the need to explain it. Gradually, those who relentlessly attempt to tear him down begin to appear unstable, overly reactive, consumed by jealousy, and ultimately weak. Because the more desperately you defend yourself, the more it seems like you genuinely need to. Conversely, the more you gracefully ignore, the more dangerous and formidable others assume you to be. And that critical assumption, that's precisely where enduring power is born. Most individuals mistakenly believe that power is synonymous with proving oneself, proving you are right, proving you are not what they claim you are, proving you are superior to their flawed perception. Yet, Machiavelli would have merely smirked at such a notion. He understood that the very second you attempt to prove anything, you have already, by default, declared the other person's judgment to be valid. And when you concede that validation to someone, you are, in essence, handing them the leash to your own control. Imagine you're in a group setting, a dinner party, a social gathering, a critical meeting. Someone throws a public jab. You always act like you know everything. Or perhaps, oh, he's always like this. I guess being humble isn't really your thing. What is the typical reaction? People tense up. They awkwardly try to laugh it off, or even worse, they launch into a defensive explanation, attempting to smooth over the perceived insult, believing they are saving face. What they are unwittingly doing, however, is confirming that a hit was successfully landed. Now everyone's attention is fixed on the defense, and that alone, sadly, makes the original jab appear true. Here is the Machiavellian alternative. Pause. Hold a silent, deliberate stillness for a full 2 seconds. Scan the room, not with aggression, but with a quiet, almost amused detachment. Then, and only if absolutely necessary, offer something calm, exquisitely precise, and dismissive. Perhaps a simple, "You seem emotional today," or a non-committal, "Interesting take," or, most powerfully, nothing at all, just a long, unblinking, unwavering gaze. What happens next is remarkably predictable. The attacker visibly shifts. They fidget. They desperately look for backup. They might even try to explain away their own joke. They feel the palpable heat of the room's attention shifting entirely onto them because your profound lack of reaction has just communicated something to the room far louder than any words ever could. You are not the one under judgment. They are. In the rapidly escalating digital arena, where comments, posts, call-outs, and direct messages constantly attempt to bait you into reacting, Machiavelli would imprint this truth into your very mind. In the court of public opinion, silence speaks guilt, unless your silence commands fear. Therefore, the ultimate online tactic is this. When attacked, do not defend. Do not explain. Instead, distort. You do not directly address the claim, you redirect the underlying energy back into the observing crowd. For example, if someone calls you toxic or manipulative, instead of posting a tearful, lengthy defense or an exhaustive clarification, you post a single powerful statement like, "People always call you dangerous when they can't control you." What has just occurred? You didn't defend yourself. You skillfully reframed their accusation into a potent badge of your own power. Now, they look bitter and resentful while you appear utterly unfazed. The audience, witnessing this dynamic, begins to question who is truly in control. This is not mere damage control, this is narrative dominance. Let's dissect this even further, employing a surgical precision. There are 3 essential tools you can deploy instead of ever defending yourself. First, silence. This is your default, a cold, immensely powerful weapon that leaves your accusers exposed and flailing. Second, deflection. This involves skillfully reframing the entire narrative without ever acknowledging the specific jab. You shift the focus. Third, precision cuts. These are short, incisive truths that immediately end the game, cutting through the noise. Consider these examples. If someone says, "You're full of yourself," your response is, "Confidence often upsets the insecure." If they declare, "You're fake," you retort, "I don't owe you authenticity." If they challenge, "You think you're better than everyone?" you calmly state, "No, I just don't think like everyone." These are not defenses. They are powerful status assertions. They do not say, "I am not guilty." They unequivocally declare, "You cannot touch me." This is the core principle. The Machiavellian figure never begs to be perceived as good. Instead, he dares people to see him as bad, and then walks taller for it, radiating an unshakable confidence. When you resolutely refuse to defend yourself, a peculiar and powerful phenomenon occurs with your enemies. They become unhinged. They anticipated a direct battle, a skirmish where they could engage and wound you. Instead, they find themselves swinging wildly at smoke. They begin to escalate their attacks, pushing harder, becoming more dramatic, and in doing so, they inadvertently expose more and more of their own underlying insecurity. The more they thrash and struggle, the more your stature quietly rises in the eyes of others. Why? Because you have skillfully orchestrated their own public collapse. This is the Machiavellian endgame. You don't actively destroy your enemies. You allow their own obsessive fixation with you to destroy themselves. Most people mistakenly believe that being misunderstood is dangerous, but in truth, being predictable is far worse. The misunderstood individual possesses an enigmatic mystery, an aura of intrigue. The predictable person, however, is easily manipulated and controlled. Those who are constantly striving to clear things up are often perceived as desperate, seeking approval. Those who remain calmly misunderstood, however, are feared. Machiavelli famously observed, "It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both." But even more profoundly, it is better to be confusing than predictable, for the confused man is cautious. He watches you, he hesitates, he does not act rashly. And that, in turn, means you retain undisputed control of the playing field. Let us dismantle the final, most pervasive illusion. You do not need a good reputation to triumph. You need a strong one. The individual with a good reputation is expected to be clean, soft, and agreeable, easily swayed. The individual with a strong reputation, however, may not always be universally liked, nor is he always implicitly trusted. But crucially, no one dares to casually move against him. This is the natural consequence of consistently refusing to defend yourself. Your reputation ceases to be about what people believe about you, and instead it transforms into what they fear you will do next. This is how you fundamentally flip the power dynamic. You cease fighting for approval and, in its place, you meticulously cultivate an aura that compels people to be cautious in your presence. Even your silence becomes a deliberate decision, and every strategic move you don't make reverberates powerfully within their minds. The ultimate evolution of this strategy is not just silence, it is the cultivation of an unshakable aura. This is a presence so profoundly composed, so inherently secure, so utterly above the petty noise of accusations that criticisms simply evaporate before they even have a chance to land. This powerful state does not stem from being emotionless. Rather, it arises from being deliberately, by design, unbothered. Once you have rigorously trained yourself not to defend, not to explain, and not to seek external validation, you cross an irreversible line. A line where your very existence, your calm and resolute presence, becomes the ultimate defense. And at that point, power becomes effortless, flowing from you naturally. Consider the rare individuals in life who never feel the need to explain themselves. They don't post lengthy rants online. They don't furiously correct the record. They don't engage in protracted arguments with their critics. And yet, paradoxically, people respect them more deeply. Why? Because silence in the face of accusation creates a powerful myth. It invites interpretation, compelling others to fill the void. The human mind, when left without an immediate explanation, instinctively fills that void with perceived strength. People assume you must be formidable, that you must possess a secret knowledge they lack, that you are so profoundly secure in your own being that you don't even blink when challenged. And that powerful assumption, that's what inspires people to follow you. Machiavelli was not concerned with being good. He was obsessed with being in absolute control. And the one who never defends himself is always, irrevocably, in control of perception, even when surrounded by a sea of lies. Here lies the profound paradox. The more desperately you explain yourself, the more isolated you appear. This is because no one feels the compulsion to step in and defend you when you are already passionately arguing on your own behalf. But if you remain calm, if you stand silent and utterly unfazed, people begin to feel an irresistible urge to defend you. They will interject with comments like, "That was uncalled for," or "He didn't deserve that." They might ask your accuser, "Why are you still coming after him? He didn't even respond, and you're still pushing." Suddenly, the crowd spontaneously becomes your shield. And what could possibly be more advantageous than defending yourself, allowing others to do it for you, without even being asked? This is Machiavellian leverage. Let the crowd passionately argue your case while you remain majestically above the fray. At this point, you are not merely respected, you are elevated. This transformative shift does not occur overnight. You build it like a formidable fortress, stone by meticulously placed stone. It is constructed by consistently acting with profound restraint, by deliberately choosing stillness over impulsive reaction, and by never explaining more than is absolutely necessary. Begin here. Never bother to correct insults that are clearly designed solely to provoke a reaction. Let them speak. Let their words echo meaninglessly. Your unbroken silence communicates to everyone in the room that their petty insult didn't even register on your radar. Respond to indirect jabs with calm, almost bewildered confusion rather than immediate offense. A serene, "Is that how you see it?" delivered with utter tranquility effectively dismantles the emotional energy underpinning their attack. Utilize short, definitive closing phrases instead of lengthy defenses. Noted. Okay, think what you like. Time will tell. Each of these phrases acts as a door closing, not an invitation to further debate. They decisively end the scene. Meticulously study how you carry your face, your body, your gaze. The Machiavellian figure never twitches, flinches, or tenses up. Stillness is his impenetrable armor. The more tranquil and composed you remain when others lose their control, the more silently your power expands. When people have no idea how to provoke you, they inevitably begin to fear you because you become unpredictable, not erratic, but profoundly unreadable. You become a mirror that chillingly reflects their own instability back at them. Machiavelli would conclude, the most dangerous man is not the one who attacks first, it is the one who never needs to. You will eventually reach a pivotal point where the attacks against you cease, not because you fought them off, but because people instinctively know they will lose before they even begin. Your very presence radiates a clear message. I don't play defense. I allow others to destroy themselves while futilely attempting to reach me. There is a fundamental difference between mere strength and true immunity. Strength might still flinch, still react, still get emotional, even if it fights back with vigor. Immunity, however, doesn't even acknowledge the hit. That is the Machiavellian ideal. You don't win the argument, you end the argument before it even begins by never needing to answer it. Because when you no longer defend yourself, people cease to perceive you as someone who needs to be put on trial. You are simply not operating on their level. You have ascended beyond the petty court of public approval, and the only judgment that holds any true weight is your own. From this moment forward, you do not exist in a state of defense. You exist in a state of definition. You define your own image. You define your own tone. You define your own silence. And people profoundly feel that. They sense the unshakable certainty behind your eyes. the profound calmness in your posture, the quiet danger in your unwavering stillness. You are no longer resisting, you are unequivocally commanding, and that is when the entire room shifts. The crowd speaks less, your enemies grow quieter. Your name begins to carry an undeniable weight, not because you fought for it, but because you never once explained it. To never defend yourself does not mean to never speak. It means speaking only when your words strategically shift the power dynamic. When you utter something, it should feel like a deliberate, calculated move, not a mere reactive response. Because every single time you choose not to explain yourself, every time you hold perfectly still while the world spins in a chaotic frenzy around you, you become the one thing they can never control, a man who answers to no one but himself.